Okay, guys, so here we are again. Today we are looking at the part 3 on war in the Pacific, on how Japan lost the war. So please make sure you have your notes, make sure you're ready. Please don't be doing this at 11 p.m. It's not going to help you, okay? Remember that this is the process, okay? You should be here and you should have already read the textbook. And as we go through the content, remember to fill up your notes. Also, write down questions, okay? You know that you can pause the video, so take a post-it note, okay? Write down questions. Come to class, ask me, okay? Especially when we're clarifying content, so on and so forth, right? That will really help you to know what's going on. So here we are. This is the last chapter of Sec 3, and we have already looked through this. We have already looked through this. We have already looked through this. Today, we are going to look at Allied strategy, okay? The reason why we are leaving atomic bomb for the last thing is because it's the last in chronological order, okay? I'm just explaining why I am doing it as the last point, even though it falls under the subvector of American might. Okay, so today we're going to look at how Allied strategy led to Japan's defeat. Here, remember, allies, we are talking about the USA, we are talking about the UK, and also the USSR. We must remember they were on the same side. Okay, so let's go. Okay. So the two main points that we are looking at, it is the victory in Europe and the desire to end the war swiftly. Remember, World War II exists in Europe and in Asia, and the war in Europe ends much earlier. Okay, both end in 1945, but the war in Europe ends earlier. So the question is, how does that affect what happens in Asia? Okay. So my point here is how Allied strategy will shape the war. Okay, overall Allied strategy, we must think about what they are trying to achieve throughout the world. Okay, so actually we are talking about how World War II in Europe affects World War II in Asia. Okay, so this is what we were talking about. World War II in Europe. We know that World War II in Europe, it ends in April 1945. But World War II in Asia, oops, sorry. But Japan's surrender is in September 1945. Okay, so the question is, how did these few months in between affect what is going on? Okay, so let's have a look at it. We're talking about war. What wins wars? Soldiers, resources, okay, tactics, okay. So the Allies were fighting in two theaters. What does this mean? The implication is that the resources and the attention are split into two. And furthermore, what was their priority? Their priority was to defeat Hitler. Okay, that was their stated priority. Japan was the second priority. Okay, and so when Hitler died and Germany surrendered in April 1945, the Allies turned all their attention to the Pacific, which means that the full might of the Allied military is focused on Japan. Okay, that means that Japan's all alone in the war. What is the implication? There is no way Japan can win. How can a single country hold up against what is essentially the rest of the world, especially a country as small as Japan with a population more than 10 times smaller than the USA alone. Okay, and so knowing this, the Allies demand an unconditional surrender. Unconditional means the Japanese have no choice, okay, have no say. And why is this an unconditional surrender? Remember in World War One, okay, there were terms of surrender, right? So we have the Treaty of Versailles, so on and so forth. But what happens is that when the Germans were allowed to have their own government with the Weimar Republic and so on and so forth, we know what happened. We know Hitler came to power, and we know that will trigger World War II. So, knowing this, that is why the Allies want an unconditional surrender. So, what do the Allies want to do? The Allies want to prevent an aggressive Japanese government. Okay? So, what they want to do is actually to take over. They're going to defeat Japan and they're going to install a new government, which is actually what happened. That is why after 1945, Japan's culture is very much influenced by the USA. Okay? So you can see why, how the Americans would want to, and Americans and the rest of allies, okay, would want to shape the fight against Japan. Okay? Furthermore, okay, the Allies wanted to end the war fast. Okay, the Japanese really didn't want to surrender. They have kamikaze. Kamikaze is the suicide planes, right? Okay, and what is the issue with no surrender? No surrender, this will cost many lives. Okay, it's like this. If we are playing sports, and okay, you know, in rugby you start at 0-0. Okay, and you play the game, you score a try, so on and so forth. In rugby, you can hit a cap score. Okay, the maximum score you can get is 84 points. So at 84 points, no matter what the opponent's team has scored, maybe 70 points, you win the game. Okay, as long as you touch 84 or cross 84 points. Okay, and or let's say in other sports, maybe you know that, wow, you know, you're down so much and there's no time to come back, you will just surrender, right? It's a walkover. Okay, if there is a walkover, okay, or you surrender, what does it do? It means that you save lives, right? If the Japanese just decide to surrender, it means the US doesn't have to launch a land invasion of Japan. Okay, and that is why. So that's what the Allies are thinking. They're thinking, I want to end the war quickly. I want Japan to quickly surrender so that I don't have to spend more soldiers. Okay? So this is one of the reasons why they want to end the war quickly, which eventually would influence the decision to use the atomic bomb. Okay? Another reason why the Allies really wanted to end the war quickly is because the Japanese had POWs. Okay, POWs are prisoners of war, and the Japanese were treating them very, very harshly. Okay, there's one of the famous examples is the Death Railway. Okay, and so the Allies wanted to save them. This is, well, kamikaze is what the Japanese do. They would strap themselves in. They would load their planes up with explosives, and they would dive. They would suicide. Okay, they commit suicide, ritual suicide, by diving into American warships. Okay, and so this was really something that caused great psychological damage. Okay, and because of this, then the Allies, they wanted to, even more so, they want to end the war. Why? To reduce the toll of the psychological damage, to reduce damages, basically to save as much lives as possible. Okay, so if you can see what is facing Japan now, everybody is looking at them and everybody wants to end the war quickly. Okay, so this is Death Railway. You can go and Google some images. Some of it is still in Thailand. I don't suppose you're going to go to Burma, but basically it was built with slave labor. Okay. And you can see the numbers here. These are there are many POWs who are working on the Death Railway. And the Allies knew this, and that is why they wanted Japan to surrender as quickly as possible so that they could liberate all these POWs. Okay? And so when we see the final Allied strategy, what do we see? There are two things, right? They want to end the war quickly. Why? To save lives. Okay? And they also want to, they know that they can force, okay? They want to end World War II on the Allies' terms. Right, they don't want Japan to have any right to have terms and conditions and so on and so forth. But that's because Japan can't win. Okay, so we will see that this together would eventually lead to decision to use the atomic bomb. Simply because the Japanese didn't want to surrender. But we are going to look at that next. Okay, and so that is what we are going to do for now. What is the recap? The recap is that we need to understand why the Allies were going to use the atomic bomb, the reasons for why they would choose to use the atomic bomb. Okay, so we will end here. I would suggest that you take some time to digest this before we move on to the next lesson on the atomic bomb. Okay.